If you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-sized understanding. When you look out, a golf ball-sized awareness. And when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball-sized wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness. And when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter. It's a small world. It's a small world. It's a small world. We're living in one small world. It's a small world. It's all one. It's a small world. We're living in one small world. It's a small world.
There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter.
Matter seems like a good place to begin. The solidity of the world seems totally indisputable. As a fixed thing that you can see and touch, your body is also reassuringly solid. But beginning with Einstein, modern physics has assured us that this solidity is a mirage.
All of physical matter, everything we have around us, is the result of a frequency. And what that also means is that if you amplify the frequency, the structure of the matter will change.
What this self-contained system is a hologram. It's what I call the super hologram. Everything within it is an expression of that hologram. This is one of the great characteristics of a hologram, is that every part of a holographic picture is a smaller version of the whole.
It's as if reality is so connected that when you look at one small part, you can see things about other parts. That the entire whole is contained in the part. And in a sense, you can't divide reality up because we're cutting up a hologram. We can't find where one particle is because it's always a reflection of all particles.
In a hologram, the whole pattern is whole and complete unto itself. And if you were to take any little portion of this whole out and examine it closely, you will see the entire pattern repeating itself again and again and again. Anywhere in this pattern, if we were to change one little aspect on any one of these little holograms, that change would be reflected throughout the entire system.
Quantum physics has revealed what ancient masters knew. Matter does not exist. The concept of substance arose from the philosophy of Aristotle, and from that concept came science's conception of matter. The fact of the matter is that the substance of the universe is consciousness. Belief that the substance of the universe is matter leads to what I call a fear-greed dichotomy, as people in their quiet desperation attempt to accumulate as many material possessions and riches as possible. In fact, the substance of the universe is consciousness. Therefore, it is behavior that is important.
If you get into the realms of fear, fear is a very slow, dense, vibrational state. And the more you embody fear, and the whole of this manipulated society is globally is structured to make us fear, to make us have stress, to make us worry about tomorrow, and have guilt about yesterday, and forget about now. It brings us into a slow vibrating dense state.
We should be very careful about what we believe about the future, the more you attach to a belief system, the more, if reality is holographic, you're helping create it by believing it. And the great clairvoyant Edgar Cayce said that our every thought, that reality is built out of thought, and our every thought starts to build reality, and every thought is like a spider, we're like spider spinning web, and that web starts to build and build.
Information is the key, because this matrix, this illusory reality that we think is real, people say to me, what is the matrix? Answer, it's information.
Information creates fractals. As information flow increases, the number of fractals, mathematically speaking, increase. This was demonstrated by a mathematician named Theodore Gordon. Fractals are unpredictable functions, so things are becoming more and more unpredictable.
When you start getting into fractals and chaos theory, when you look at it in terms of a society, this is where it starts to cross over into the so-called Illuminati or the negative elite, the world leaders with their philosophy of order out of chaos. There is some truth to that, in the sense that when the system becomes highly destabilized, there will be random shifts that suddenly self-organize into higher complexity.
At the subatomic level, reality behaves in accordance with the expectation of the observer, or the measurer, the scientist. Why is that remarkable? Because everything in the universe is composed of those subatomic particles.
These atoms are particles that are whirling at lightning speeds around huge empty spaces, and the particles aren't material objects. They are fluctuations of energy and information in a huge void of energy and information.
And what the science now is showing is that when you can change the field that the atom is in, you change the atom. And we're made of those atoms. So when we have feelings in our hearts, we're changing the field that connects the stuff everything is made of, and we literally are altering our physical reality.
Once you establish the reality we live in, and the nature of what the physical body is, it's a biological computer, and the nature of what we are, which is consciousness, and then you start, as I have, looking at the way this world is structured and how it works and why they do this and why they do that, it suddenly brings into crystal clarity why the world is structured as it is. Because people look through their eyes and they think this is the world, but it isn't. It's a tiny, tiny frequency range within an infinite energy field of infinite frequency ranges, and basically it's like a holographic television channel.
It is the act of consciousness that actually creates the building block that the universe is made of. I can't imagine a universe that exists without us, because it's the act of us observing the world around us that is creating, allowing us to create as we go in a participatory universe. We may never find the edge of our universe as we're looking to define what this universe looks like. We may never find the smallest particle in the quantum world to see what this stuff is that we're made out of. And the reason is because everywhere we look, everywhere that consciousness explores with the expectation that something will be there, that exploration, that act of looking, observation, is the act that creates something for us to see. That we are actually building this universe as we go.
Consciousness is the programming language of the universe. We are consciousness conductors. That's what we do. That's who we are. Consciousness comes through us. It emanates from us. We are the creators. We are the ones who are targeted on this planet because we are the ones who transmit the reality just like everybody else does. If you switch your brain off and you are sucked into the mainstream media illusion, we must understand that we are being used because we create reality. So if we are manipulated in a certain way, and if we are modulated in a certain way, then our creation becomes not ours but somebody else's.
And what happens if we all do it? Everyone in this room decides to take control of reality. I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about quantum physics. I'm talking about taking control of things from the quantum level up, from the molecular level up, and it works. One of the things we're actually dealing with is some kind of operating system that can be hacked using words.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
I want you to listen.
And then what?
Share it.
With?
Whoever you share with. Whoever you know, the people you're close to.
Here's a lump of flesh, about 3 pounds, which you can hold in the palm of your hand, but it can contemplate the vastness of interstellar space. It can contemplate the meaning of infinity, ask questions about the meaning of its own existence, about the nature of God. And this is truly the most amazing thing in the world. It's the greatest mystery confronting human beings. How does this all come about? Well, the brain, as you know, is made up of neurons. Looking at neurons here, there are 100 billion neurons in the adult human brain, and each neuron makes something like 1,000 to 10,000 contacts with other neurons in the brain. And based on this, people have calculated that the number of permutations and combinations of brain activity exceeds the number of elementary particles in the universe. So how do you go about studying the brain? One approach is to look at patients who had lesions in different parts of the brain and study changes in their behavior. And this is what I spoke about in the last TED. Today I'll talk about a different approach, which is to put electrodes in different parts of the brain and actually record the activity of individual nerve cells in the brain, and sort of eavesdrop on the activity of nerve cells in the brain. Now, one recent discovery that has been made by researchers in Italy, in Parma, by Giacomo Rizzolatti and his colleagues, is a group of neurons called mirror neurons, which are in the front of the brain in the frontal lobes. Now, it turns out there are neurons which are called ordinary motor command neurons in the front of the brain, which have been known for over 50 years. These neurons will fire when a person performs a specific action. For example, if I do that and reach and grab an apple, a motor command neuron in the front of my brain will fire. If I reach out and pull an object, another neuron will fire, commanding me to pull that object. These are called motor command neurons that have been known for a long time. But what Rizzolatti found was a subset of these neurons, maybe about 20% of them, will also fire when I'm looking at somebody else performing the same action. So here's a neuron that fires when I reach and grab something, but it also fires when I watch Joe reaching and grabbing something. And this is truly astonishing because it's as though this neuron is adopting the other person's point of view. It's almost as though it's performing a virtual reality simulation of the other person's action. Now, what is the significance of these mirror neurons? For one thing, they must be involved in things like imitation and emulation, because to imitate a complex act requires my brain to adopt the other person's point of view. So this is important for imitation and emulation. Well, why is that important? Well, let's take a look at the next slide. So how do you do imitation? Why is imitation important? Mirror neurons and imitation and emulation. Now, let's look at culture, the phenomenon of human culture. If you go back in time about 75 to 100,000 years ago, let's look at human evolution. It turns out there's something very important happened around 75,000 years ago, and that is there's a sudden emergence and rapid spread of a number of skills that are unique to human beings, like tool use, the use of fire, the use of shelters, and of course language, and the ability to read somebody else's mind and interpret that person's behavior. All of that happened relatively quickly. Even though the human brain had achieved its present size almost 300,000 or 400,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, all of this happened very, very quickly. And I claim that what happened was the sudden emergence of a sophisticated mirror neuron system, which allowed you to emulate and imitate other people's actions. So that when there was a sudden accidental discovery by one member of the group, say use of fire or a particular type of tool, instead of dying out, this spread rapidly horizontally across the population, or was transmitted vertically down the generations. So this made evolution suddenly Lamarckian instead of Darwinian. In Darwinian, evolution is slow, it takes hundreds of thousands of years. A polar bear to evolve a coat will take thousands of generations, maybe 100,000 years. A human being, a child, can just watch its parent kill another polar bear and skin it and put the skin on its body, fur on the body, and learn it in one step. What the polar bear took 100,000 years to learn, it can learn in 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, right? And then once it's learned this, it spreads in geometric proportion across the population. And this is the basis of this imitation of complex skills, is what we call culture, and is the basis of civilization. Now there's another kind of mirror neuron, which is involved in something quite different, and that is, there are mirror neurons, just as there are mirror neurons for action, there are mirror neurons for touch. In other words, if somebody touches me, my hand, a neuron in the somatosensory cortex, in the sensory region of the brain, fires. But the same neuron, in some cases, will fire when I simply watch another person being touched. So it's empathizing the other person being touched. So most of them will fire when I'm touched in different locations, different neuron for different locations, but a subset of them will fire even when I watch somebody else being touched in the same location. So here again you have neurons which are involved in empathy. Now the question then arises, if I simply watch another person being touched, why do I not get confused and literally feel that touch sensation merely by watching somebody being touched? I mean, I empathize with that person, but I don't literally feel the touch. Well, that's because you've got receptors in your skin, touch and pain receptors, going back into your brain and saying, don't worry, you're not being touched. So empathize by all means with the other person, but do not actually experience the touch, otherwise you'll get confused and muddled. Okay, so there's a feedback signal that vetoes the signal of the mirror neuron, preventing you from consciously experiencing that touch. But if you remove the arm, or you simply anesthetize my arm, so you put an injection into my arm, anesthetize the brachial plexus, so the arm is numb, there's no sensations coming in. If I now watch you being touched, I literally feel it in my hand. In other words, you've dissolved the barrier between you and other human beings. So I call them Gandhi neurons, or empathy neurons. And this is not in some abstract metaphorical sense. All that's separating you from him, from the other person, is your skin. Remove the skin, you experience that person's touch in your mind. You have dissolved the barrier between you and other human beings. And this, of course, is the basis of much of Eastern philosophy, and that is there's no real independent self aloof from other human beings, inspecting the world and inspecting other people. You are in fact connected, not just via Facebook and internet. You're actually quite literally connected by your neurons, and there's whole chains of neurons around this room talking to each other, and there is no real distinctiveness of your consciousness from somebody else's consciousness. And this is not mumbo-jumbo philosophy. It emerges from our understanding of basic neuroscience. So you have a patient with a phantom limb, the arm has been removed, and you have a phantom, and you watch somebody else being touched, you feel it in your phantom. Now the astonishing thing is, if you have pain in your phantom limb, you squeeze the other person's hand, massage the other person's hand, that relieves the pain in your phantom hand. Almost as though the neuron were obtaining relief from merely watching somebody else being massaged. So here you have my last slide. For the longest time, people have regarded science and humanities as being distinct. C.P. Snow spoke of the two cultures, science on the one hand, humanities on the other. Never the twain shall meet. So I'm saying the mirror neuron system lies at the interface, allowing you to think about issues like consciousness, representation of self, what separates you from other human beings, what allows you to empathize with other human beings, and also even things like the emergence of culture and civilization, which is unique to human beings.
Om Satchidananda Parabrahma Purushottama Paramatma Shri Bhagavati Sameta Shri Bhagavati Namah Shri Bhagavati Sameta Shri Bhagavati Namah Shri Bhagavati Sameta Shri Bhagavati Namah Shri Bhagavati Namah Shri Bhagavati Namah Om Shanti Shanti Shanti
The non-finding of yourself phenomenally or personally is the discovery of the true. And that is imageless. There's an imageless presence. It has no form of itself, but it seems to assume a form. But of itself it is formless. And when one recognizes, actually in the absence of the presence of ego, in the absence of the presence of ego, you are never more happy. You are never more alive. And from the mind you think, oh, but if I lose personality, I'm finished. What's it all about? Why are all these millions of people trying to get rid of themselves? Because if they lose themselves, they're finished. I don't have a job, I'm not a father, I'm not a mother anymore, everything, I'm finito. But in the actuality of the experience, in complete serenity, if you don't identify, if you don't say this should not be, or this means I am not ready, all of that, because the actuality of the phenomenon might happen. That's not the problem. If there's a problem, it's because some interpreting energies are coming up. And it's the interpretation, the negative, dictating interpretations that is bringing up the bad smell inside, not the phenomena itself. Let everything happen. Let everything happen. And find that stillness within that is not participating, but in whose presence the perceiving of all things occur.
To me, the ego is habitual and compulsive thought processes that go through everybody's mind continuously. Psychologists have found that 98 to 99% of our thinking is repetitive. And also a lot of our thinking is actually very negative. People tend to dwell more on negative things than on good things. So that the mind becomes obsessed with negative things, with judgments, guilt.
In fact, Tolle blames most of the ills of our world on our egos. Wars, broken homes, our destruction of the planet. Tolle's other big point is that we are wasting our lives by refusing to live in the present moment.
Many people live habitually as if the present moment were either an obstacle that they need to overcome in order to get to the next moment. And imagine living your whole life like that, where always this moment is never quite right, not good enough, because you need to get to the next one. That is continuous stress.
Tolle says he can teach people to tame that voice in their head and live in the present through what he calls awakening.
It's a state of consciousness, not some weird belief system that we need to adopt. It's much more fundamental and much more simple.
After he awakened, he says he quit his job as an academic and eventually sat on a park bench, homeless, for several years, living in a state of bliss. How did you get this way? How did you awaken?
I was so unhappy that I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to step out of this identification with the unhappy mind-created self.
So unhappy that you were considering suicide?
Yes, I was several times close to suicide, and so one night a shift happened and I realized the unhappy me, the unhappy self, is not really who I am. I could sense underneath it a presence and an aliveness and an intelligence that had nothing to do with all the negative thoughts that were continuously going through my head.
To those who are going to hear this and say, flaky, you say, fine, you're losing out.
It's your mind that has some judgments about it, because your mind doesn't understand what I'm talking about. So then there needs to be a little bit of a glimmer of a recognition from a dimension that is deeper than the mind in you. And then you see, whoa, he actually has a point.
And if you can see his point, says Eckhart Tolle, you can change your life for the better forever. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Toronto, Canada.
So everything that exists is everything that exists. I am everything that exists. So are you. The more you realize that, the more you open up to the full infinity of who you are. Your life transformed. Your vision of yourself is transformed. Your vision of everything is transformed. The more you see yourself as just an individual, ordinary little man and woman in the street, I got no power, mate, what can I do? Once you do that, you are shutting yourself off from the infinity of who you are, and you become a fraction of what you are. And then you are able to be controlled, but only then. Which is why this understanding has been so suppressed. That's where most people live their lives. In a sense of, I can't, mate, I could never, mate, all the best things in life happen to someone else, mate, oh, what can I do? And when we're there, piece of cake, manipulator in one hand while having a cup of tea in another. When we're here, we're a manipulator's nightmare, breaking the eggshell, breaking the sense of limitation, breaking the sense of fear, The fear of what other people think of us. How many people watching this video now would love to say something, but they think, oh, God, what will my mother say? Oh, what will they think of me? Oh, you'd love to do something in your life, and you say, oh, well, what will they think? I couldn't give a damn what they think. They have a right to think what they like, but so do you and so do I. We forgot that. And once we start believing that because people are different to us, they must be wrong, then we're in a situation where whoever sets the norms in society runs the world. Because we police each other, like I said right at the start of this journey we've both been on, and all been on the last few hours. Cracking the eggshell, stepping out of the fear of what other people think of us, being who we are, speaking our truth, living our uniqueness. That is the revolution. It's not guns and bombs and meeting violence with violence and meeting anger with anger. What's the point? You get twice the anger, twice the violence. My goodness me, we've moved on, haven't we? The way out of this is the ultimate revolution. It's to be who we are and not what someone else tells us we should be. It's interesting. If you stood in front of a mirror, or not even in front of a mirror, anywhere, and you got a baseball bat, and you started smacking yourself around the head with it, people would call the guys in white coats, wouldn't they? Crikey, get him away. And yet that's what we're doing all the time. When we express that violence to another human being, or to an animal, or to anything, we're actually expressing it to ourselves, because that is us. We are all each other, because we are all this infinite mind. And because we've lost sight of the fact that we are everything, and what we are inside is what we externally create, we go round, because of the manipulation, we're like walking, talking movie projectors. Let me put it this way. Our inner self, our state of being, our attitudes are resonating us to a certain vibrational frequency. You change your attitudes, the frequency changes. Hate has a certain frequency. And when we feel hate, we resonate the energy around us, that is us, to the hate frequency. We feel love, we resonate it to a different frequency. This energy that we put out with this vibrational code within it, created by our thoughts and attitudes, then draws towards it a reflection of itself. Other energy fields, people, places, ways of life, experiences that sync with what we're putting out. Therefore, what we are in here, we externally create. And I came across this symbol here. There's some esoteric symbols and that involved in there, but ignore all them. I'm just looking at the basic concept, which is of a reflection. There was a guy, a writer called Longfellow. I think it was Longfellow who wrote this. Anyway, some tall chap. And he wrote a story about how someone drowned thrashing in the water, fighting with their own reflection. And again, if you saw someone next to the river doing that, you'd call the white coats. They'd be on call all day, wouldn't they? But that's what we do, all of us, all the time. We seek to change what we've created by thrashing at the reflection instead of looking at what's creating it. So when things are happening in our lives we don't like, and we're drawing people into our lives we don't like, and we're drawing experiences we don't like, instead of saying, why am I drawing these in? What is it about me that's creating this? What is it I'm putting out that's drawing this reflection in that I don't like? This pain in the arse is giving me a hard time. Instead of taking that power back and responsibility for what we create in our lives, we look out there for it. Boom, boom, boom. And we're encouraged to. And so we're in a situation where we're looking at the reflection, trying to change what's going on, when we need to change what is being reflected. You know, if you're standing next to a river and you see a reflection of yourself and you don't like it very much, you can throw stones at it, you can cuss it, you can kick it, you can jump in and thrash around. All that external thing, which we do in our lives all the time. You're responsible, it's your fault, I'm in this position, out there, out there, out there, externalizing responsibility. But once all that thrashing around is finished in the river, and once you've thrown all those stones in, everything settles down again, And exactly the same reflection is being reflected as was before, because the reflection is merely, literally, a mirror of what is being reflected. We change inside, we change out here. This is the thing that we've been pressured, encouraged not to understand. Evolution's very, very simple. Very simple. Goes in this sequence. Experience, learn from the experience, evolve as a result of the experience.
The great Indian teacher, Krishnamurti, somebody heard him once and they said, I think the more I listen to you, I realize you must be an atheist. And Krishnamurti turned to him and he said, I used to be an atheist till I realized I was God. So which annoyed the fundamentalists because he said, you're denying the divinity of Krishna. In America, we would say, you're denying the divinity of Jesus Christ. And Krishnamurti said, heavens, I've never denied anybody their divinity. Why would you do it to Krishna? You're all divine. We're all divine. Okay? Rumi, he says, you're not just a drop in the ocean, you're the whole ocean in the drop. Okay? So the great Sufi teachers of Islam said the same thing. That your consciousness is a movement in the infinite consciousness. And we are all contained in that infinite consciousness. Okay? We're sharing the same breath right now, we're sharing the same molecules right now, we're sharing the same energy field right now, the same information field. And we are all contained in one consciousness. If you really totally get this, then you realize there's nothing other than God.
Of the tenets that are available to us through these lost texts, if we were to go through at least the 45 books that we're aware of, and hone all that information down into those 4 tenets, and I just shared those with you. The first one says there's only one of us here. We're unity by nature. The second one reminds us that unity consciousness is moving collectively toward this rare moment in history. The third one reminds us that we have direct access to the creative forces of our world. And the last one suggests that the science of compassion may be the most ancient science that allows us to gracefully transcend the great challenges of our life with grace. Well, 2 of those tenets I'd like to develop further. Well, one of those, it's the one that says there's only one of us here, that our consciousness is holographic in nature. The term hologram means different things to different people. Do we really understand the implications of what it means to live in a holographic consciousness? When I say the word hologram, what do I mean by that? Of the many definitions that we may choose for a hologram, perhaps one of the simplest and the most eloquent may be as follows: that a hologram is simply a pattern that is whole and complete unto itself, and at the same time it's part of an even greater pattern that is whole and complete unto itself, while at the same time is part of an even greater pattern. Now this pattern can be non-physical energy, or it can be very physical matter. The cells of your body are holographic in nature. One cell has all the information it needs to create another one of you. It is whole and complete unto itself, and it's part of an even greater pattern that you call your body. Okay, consciousness works this way. We are many expressions individualized of a unity consciousness. And what that means, and this is the beauty of the hologram, any place in the pattern of a hologram where you make one little change, that change is mirrored throughout the rest of the hologram. If you make one tiny change, it's mirrored throughout the rest of the hologram. Perhaps a good example, this is a story that's told from the Spanish journals when the explorers were coming over looking for new routes into this world in the 1500s. One of the routes took them around the coast of South America, and the Spanish galleons that were making this journey, sometimes journeys took many months, up to a year, they set ashore for supplies in a place where the Spanish had never recorded being before, And they were met on the shores by the indigenous people of that area who apparently had never seen white people before, had never seen Western technology before. And fortunately for this particular story, one of the first men to meet them on the shore was the shaman of the tribe. He was the holy man. So here the holy man of the tribe meets the Spanish as they're coming ashore. They left the large ships out on the water and they came ashore in smaller rowboats. And however they communicated, in whatever language they were using, the holy man asked them, "Where did you just come from?" I mean, they've been here for years. They've never seen people like this coming up onto their shore. And however they communicated in return, the Spanish said, "We came on this little boat from that big boat with the wooden planks and the canvas sails out on the horizon of the ocean." And the holy man looked to where the Spanish were pointing, and he couldn't see that ship. The ship was there, and it was of a pattern that was so foreign to his frame of reference, it made no sense to his conscious recognition. He didn't recognize it. And as I hear this story, I often wonder, how many times does that happen in our world, in our lives? How many times do things happen right in front of us, and maybe we disallow it because it doesn't make sense in terms of our frame of reference?
Was nothing. Somehow, out of this nothing came everything.
Out of this vibrant nothingness, matter, energy, space, time, consciousness, mind emerged, came out.
How is it that something as unconscious as the matter of the brain can ever give rise to something as immaterial as an experience?
If you want to see fear in a quantum physicist's eyes, just mention the words, the measurement problem. The measurement problem is this: an atom only appears in a particular place if you measure it. In other words, an atom is spread out all over the place until a conscious observer decides to look at it. So the act of measurement or observation creates the entire universe.
Only conscious beings can be observers, then we're intimately hooked into the very existence of reality. Without us, there would just be this expanding superposition of possibilities with nothing definite ever actually happening.
Out of millions and millions of blobs of energy and light, photons and electrons, they make up this imaginary three-dimensional solid world, which doesn't exist at all according to relativity or quantum mechanics.
Anytime we attempt to look at particles beyond a certain level, the very act of observation changes things.
And in addition, the more you look at individual particles, the more you realize that there is no such thing as one electron.
An electron, or any elementary particle, exists only in relationship to other things, like other particles or the universe at large. This means that deeply enough, when you dive down into the nature of matter, everything we know about the everyday world dissolves. There are no objects anymore. There are only relationships. There's no locality anymore. There's no time anymore. The more you look at something in detail, in what we think of as solid matter, the less and less solid it begins to look.
The only realities we know are the ones our brain manufactures. Our brain receives millions of signals every minute, and we organize them into holograms, which we project outside ourselves and call reality.
Well, the brain cortex, if it is also a hologram, then it's a three-dimensional hologram. If two-dimensional holograms reconstruct three-dimensional images, then, ergo, it follows that three-dimensional holograms reconstruct four-dimensional images.
A hologram is a metaphor. It is how you take n dimensions of information and you bring them down into n-1 dimensions. It's a way of relating the paradoxes that we find in how to make a leap from this concept to that concept.
The conceptual pigeonholes we use, words, to describe reality, are phenomena inside our head. They're not out there. And most of the time this is a philosophical quibble, but when you get down to quantum physics, and this is one of the reasons that Bohm came up with the holographic idea, it starts to have real effects. And one of those is it's been discovered that if you take two subatomic particles like electrons, and in certain instances, when you do something to one, it will always affect the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Well, how can this be? But what this tells us is that once matter is physically joined, even when it becomes separate, the energy is still there that's connecting it. And this is why it's important to me, because if we go back far enough in time, all the particles of matter of this entire universe that are expanding were all meshed together in a single particle about the size of a green pea. It's what scientists tell us today. It's what the computer models suggest. That if you could go into the universe today and take all the particles of matter and take out all the space in between and bring it together and compress it into a size of a single green pea, it means that you and me and every one of our listeners, we were all once part of that same particle that creates this whole universe today. And even though those particles are now separate and expanding, and the studies show that they are, energetically we're all still linked.
So an atom and its electron are multiversal objects. And that multiversal object is what the quantum mechanics is describing. Now, that means that the parallel universe aspect of reality as described by quantum theory must apply to objects of all sizes. Humans, stars, galaxies, everything. And that's why we call it the parallel universe theory rather than just parallel electrons theory.
Because we ourselves are made of atoms after all.
We are, and that's right. And the same theory that says that the atoms exist in more than one place in different universes says that we humans also exist in more than one place and in more than one state of mind and so forth in different universes.
And so what that means, talking about words, is that there is no separation between electrons. Furthermore, there's no separation between people.
Everything is interconnected, and the biggest secret of all, to me, is the extent to which individuality is an illusion.
Illusion comes from how our minds perceive.
My illusion comes from my mind, your illusion comes from your mind. You do not need to search
anywhere else for the source of illusion. Wherever we search externally, we cannot find the source of illusion because your illusions come from within your mind.
The big thing we're talking about here is a new way of thinking about this thing we call the person, the self, the beingness, the I. And as we begin to modify what we mean by that, we could begin to see and touch upon this infinite realm that I'm speaking about.
Infinities are part of the boundary of your existence. That is, viewed from this perspective, everything can be divided to infinity.
If you've ever wondered why nuclear power is 1,000,000 times more powerful than chemical energy, it's because chemical energy results from the manipulation of atoms in a molecule. nuclear energy results from the manipulation of nucleons in a nucleus. The superunified scale, 1,000 million times smaller, is virtually infinite in its dynamism.
If you're seeking the infinite, what instruments do you have to seek the infinite? Only sense organs, isn't it? So through your sense organs, if you're seeking the infinite, it is like wanting to go to moon with a bullock cart. Isn't it so? That is the plight of humanity right now. With a limited perception, they're trying to grasp that which is beyond.
So we try to perceive at the ultimate level of reality, and we search for any kind of method. For example, new technology, atomic power, etc. But search as we might, we cannot perceive the ultimate level of reality using these mechanisms. The ultimate level of reality is fundamentally empty
We cannot find
and not observable using these scientific methods.
Science is involved in a perceptual enterprise, not primarily in gaining knowledge, though knowledge appears, but knowledge is a byproduct. And by understanding the thing, you can coherently then our contact with it, as long as it is coherent, it shows that our understanding is correct. You see, we must distinguish between correct appearances and incorrect appearances or illusory.
This show contains copyrighted material, the use of which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. In accordance with our nonprofit mission, we believe this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Law.
Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Our brains take information in and sometimes give it a form. It's not that the picture is out there, it's that we're getting data that we're turning into a picture according to our own belief systems and our own unconscious belief systems as well.
We know what is going on is that light comes in through the eyes, hits the back of the retina, triggers electrochemical impulses which travel down nerve fibers to the back of the brain, where the brain very cleverly, in about 1/10 of a second, puts it all together and says, this is what it looks like out there.
Well, you're creating your own reality tunnel. That doesn't mean you're creating reality. Out of reality, whatever that is, out of the infinite flux of energy, you're creating your own reality tunnel, and most people aren't aware of it.
All matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. That we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves.
About you know